why you should be interested in UWA Elite, 2 key reasons. One, a core roster of guys you generally don't see anywhere else. Mm-hmm. These are a lot of guys who grew up wrestling each other, who grew up with a passion for the business, and for one reason or another, maybe were not looked at by other promotions. Either A, they're not quote-unquote big enough, mm-hmm. or B, they don't sell enough tickets, or, sorry, maybe that's a little inside baseball and I shouldn't say that, but these are guys who you watch them and you understand their passion for the business. You understand their chemistry in the ring with one another. Mm-hmm. And it's palpable. You can feel it. And the match quality is, in my mind, as good as any other promotion you're going to see in the tri-state area on a consistent basis. The federation, promotion, whatever you'd like to call it, mm-hmm. has produced, you may say, you look at the roster and say, I don't know any of these guys. Mm-hmm. But you look at the promotion, this is a promotion that has produced Arcadia, mm-hmm. Kyle the Beast, Eric Corvus, Mike Quest, Brian Brass, Jay Lethal mm-hmm. wrestled for UWA before he went to ROH and TNA. Mm-hmm. And not just once. He came back and had a reunion match with Mike Quest in 2012, but he spent a good portion of the mid-2000s wrestling for UWA. This is a promotion that is focused on the future, that wants to say, hey, we were the first people to give you so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And they've been able to say that with a great deal of success and efficacy for the last 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. The other reason, and I know I'm long-winded about it, but that's because this is kind of my home promotion, and it means a lot to me. You know, Dave is the guy, on the president of UWA, is a guy who gave me a chance. Mm-hmm. I had tons of experience talking, of course, and in public relations and marketing and radio, but never in wrestling. And Dave was the first guy to say, you know what, I'm going to give you a shot. Mm-hmm. So the loyalty factor for me is huge. The second thing that you need to know about UWA Elite is that it is the only purely family-friendly product in the tri-state. You come to a UWA show, or you go to a wrestling show, you don't know whether you can bring your kids, you don't know whether you can bring your niece or your nephew or your grandson or your granddaughter. It's a G-rated show. There's no cursing. There's no massive profanity. There's no inappropriateness whatsoever. It is edgy. The wrestling is good. It's intense. But you can feel safe bringing your family to the show, knowing that the wrestlers are not going to curse at your children, not going to curse at each other. It's a good place if you want your kids to get into wrestling, or if your kids love WWE and family-friendly style TV wrestling, and you need a safe environment to bring them to an independent show, UWA Elite is your place.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's really wonderful that it's a place where it kind of fosters like a family kind of feeling and family environment.
Sure. And for those of you who are kind of sick to your stomach over that, and they're like, well, that means that there's, there's no hard-hitting action and there's no quality and all that. We had Matt Tremont versus Kyle the Beast last month, and they tore each other apart for 15-plus minutes. So come on now.
Yeah, they absolutely did. They absolutely did. And that tag team match was pretty brutal, too, as well.
Oh, yeah, the main event last month, the Rogues versus the Unstoppables. Fantastic. It was so good that Dave Swan gave him a shot, and it was the first time that a tag title match had main evented a UWA show in, I want to say, 3 years, and they tore the house down. It was a great match.
Absolutely. It was absolutely insane. It was such great effort put by all those guys. It was just insane.
Sure.
It was wonderful. So how long, you mentioned that Dave Swan was the first one to give you a chance. How long have you been with UWA Elite?
UWA came back as UWA Elite with a show called Rebirth in 2011. Mm-hmm. I was in the crowd at that show. Okay. And then I was in the crowd at the next show. Mm-hmm. Then I watched every episode of YouTube programming that they put out for the next 6 months. And I was at their fall shows. I was at their first show at 2012, setting the standard at the Darris Theater in Boonton. Mm-hmm. And then just always followed the product. Mid-2012, I came to the first time they went to the Middlesex County Fair.
Okay.
In East Brunswick, New Jersey, which they have a standing relationship with, and they come back every year. Mm-hmm. Last year, their Saturday night show drew a sum total of 1,100 people.
Wow, that's amazing.
So they're huge at the fair. And David kind of recognized me a couple of times, and I recognized him, and we had started having a couple of conversations, and I said, hey, if you need anything, please let me know. And Dave gave me the opportunity to do a trial run, like a 3-4 week UWA podcast, which we just recently brought back, which is great. And then he entrusted me to do some commentary with Vincent Valentine and Mike Seaway, who's now a wrestler on the roster, and Vince Valentine's in the UWA Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And the rest has kind of been history. He's kind of been good enough to let me take the ball and run with it for going on 4 seasons as a co-war lead commentator now.
That's wonderful. And I think it's interesting because I have a very similar story myself, and I love those kind of stories, where people get...
Sure. Well, no, you know what? Honestly, for those who don't know, and I know you're spending a lot of time putting me over in UWA, and that's great, but I would love to know what your story is. Right. I know it's either with Excellence Pro or whatever. I would love to hear your story because I'm the same way. I love to hear how people get started.
My story? Wow. I wasn't expecting to be interviewed. I just
look, this is your show, absolutely. And I think it's great that people, people get to know you. I think people would love to know more about you because not to make it a big deal, but let's just call a spade. It is really cool, really, really cool to have such a prominent female commentary figure on the indies, and one that's super competent and knows what she's doing and knows her stuff. I just think it's great. Well, I don't think there's enough of a female presence in commentary in general. I think that there's a lot of women in the major promotions that they say, oh, well, she's cute, let's give her a backstage interviewer job, or, let's throw her a bone here or there. But I love the fact that you get on commentary and you own it, and you don't make it a big deal, but it is a big deal what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I have a lot of respect for you. So this coming from you, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've been really lucky in terms of being a woman and not being a wrestler. I was in training at one point. I was at the Wrestle Factory, the Chicago Wrestle Factory, but I did get hurt.
Shut up. Yeah.
Yeah, I got hurt, and that kind of stopped that. At least, hopefully, I'm hoping to go back. Because I wanted to referee for the very reason, just like you mentioned, not a lot of women are doing it. There's not a presence there. And I don't feel, in that case, that gender really should affect a good referee. A good referee is going to be a good referee, regardless of the gender.
I couldn't agree more.
If they have a good understanding of the basics, the importance, the whole scope, and there's so much that goes into refereeing. It looks simple, but it's not. The good ones make it look simple. So I felt like that was something I wanted to do. And the same thing I feel about commentary. And things like that, moving into those kind of roles, you don't see that a lot. And it seems like, too, even with the female, like, valets and managers. Excellence has one. We have Ariella Nix. But you don't see that very common anymore like you used to. That's even kind of gone out of vogue. That's something I hope that comes back as well, because I think it's a really great sort of role that women can do that helps, that maybe women who aren't interested in wrestling but want to be involved and have a mind and interest in wrestling. I think
that's important too. Is the have a mind part. Like, I don't want to politicize it. I don't want to make it an agenda. But there's a difference between kind of being an arm piece or arm candy and actually being someone like a Sherry Martel or a Moolah or a lover or hater, a Missy Hyatt, who actually brought something. Who brought a lot of character and charisma and understanding and psychology to what they did. And were captivating. Really were captivating. And I think that's sorely lacking. And I think that this thought process that somehow women won't be taken as seriously in a role as a referee or a commentator or a lead commentator is just completely false and BS at this point. I mean, it's nonsense. A good referee is a good referee. A good commentator is a good commentator, period.
Exactly. And I'm really glad you brought up Missy Hyatt, because I really feel like she does not get the credit she deserves, because you're absolutely right. She understood exactly what she was doing, exactly why she was doing it. She wasn't just acting like, you know, bimbo for no reason, or acting whatever for no reason. She had a reason for doing that. You know, she really gave a lot of thought
and you know
to
what?
that.
It's because you think of women and ballets in the mid-'90s and the early 90s, and you think of WWF at that time, and you think of kind of the ones like Sunny and Sable, who kind of transitioned the genre and transitioned the character a little bit at that time. But if you really look at the timeline of how things happened, Missy did it before a lot of them.
That's true. She was around. She
did it before a lot of them, and she managed to be a sex symbol with a brain, which, come on now. You know, it wasn't this vapid, just bimbo character. She understood what she was doing.
Absolutely. You have to have a mind to keep pace with Paulie Dangerously. With Paul Heyman, you have to have a mind to keep up with that man. Absolutely. Otherwise, he's going to outclass you, and he's going to show, you know, it's very clear that he's above you and not. And she kept pace with him. She really did.
Absolutely, really, no question whatsoever.
It was really quite amazing. You know, she really, really was. And Sherry Martel is another one that I absolutely love. It's funny, I liked her in WWF, but I think I liked her with Harlem Heat and in WCW better.
Really?
Yeah, I think I did.
That's an interesting take. I liked her in a couple of different molds. I thought she added a lot to what was the climax of one of the best stories that WWF ever told, which was the Randy Savage Elizabeth story that basically spanned 5 years. Because if you really look at what the Randy Savage and Elizabeth story was, it was a 5-year story where Randy Savage, the whole bit, Randy Savage won title after title, and he was there with Hulk, and he won the WWF Championship and had these amazing matches, but the whole story was about him and Elizabeth, and whether they were going to end up together or not. That was the story, and the commitment to that story, and just the role that Sherry played at the end of it, of being the quote-unquote evil woman who almost finally came between them, and then the big cathartic moment where he loses the retirement match to Warrior, and Elizabeth comes out of the crowd, and people cried at fake wrestling. People cried at fake wrestling at a soap opera angle. And Sherry had a lot to do with that.
You know, I think, you know, that kind of moment, it kind of transcended the idea of the soap opera, because I think there were so many things in that really hit emotions, especially for women, but also guys, you know, the idea of love and relationships and, you know, cheating and divorce. And there's all these sort of emotions, really deep, strong emotions. And I think that serves to talk about the Macho Man's intensity, but also Miss Elizabeth, who I think really does get sort of underestimated as well. She kind of gets thrown in as arm candy, but I think she did play a role, and I think she understood what she was doing. I think she played her role very well.
Well, I mean, it was, you know what, that story got the subtleties right. The little thing where Elizabeth for 5 years held the ropes for him, and then he holds the ropes for her. They don't even mention it, and it gets over huge with the crowd.
Right.
Without any prompting. I mean, it's just one of those things where if you really, I'm of the mind where if you pay a lot of attention to the little minor details of a story, and you trust in the intelligence of your fan base to notice these things, that over time you can tell really compelling stories.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that's what that comes down to. And some of my favorite individuals in wrestling, and one person in particular that I absolutely adored was R.D. Evans, who's kind of semi-retired right now. That was something he did a lot. It was his commitment to the little stories, little things, the little movements that really just fed into the character and fed into the emotion of the story and really kind of gripped me and really got my attention. It got me paying attention. It really made me feel that. So I think that those little things are so important, and that story was great. And I think what I thought was really nice was I did like the contrast between Elizabeth and Sherry. But I think when we got into, when she was with Shawn Michaels too, it was just her and Shawn. But I feel like when they were in Harlem Heat, I don't know, I feel like she just kind of, it was more her. I don't know. She just seemed to it was more about her rather than who she was with. I don't know if it's because there was like the romantic angle between like, again, the macho Elizabeth story and then with Shawn Michaels later on.
Well, that's what I liked about Sherry. What's